here with Mike Jones and Ahmed. Today we're going to talk about some of our server architecture in the cloud and some things that we've been working on from the operations and the DevOps side lately. Let's start off first by talking about what we have today. Like how most people don't know very much about what it takes to publish a game like Star Citizen. We're in an alpha phase now, and the game is available to anybody who's a backer. We have regular free fly events where even people who aren't backers can check out the game. So tell us a little bit about what's involved in actually running a game like Star Citizen today.
Almost everything we use to serve the game or the platform to the players is run on public clouds. And that had been almost always the case, as far as I know. And we have been trying different public clouds to see the perfect offering for what we need for the long term and also the short term. However, I believe IT under Mike Jones had been running our own internal clouds here as well. So we still utilize the cloud technology, whether it's public or private, on hardware owned by us.
The main thing that Ahmed's talking about is where do we put the servers? And the server, or the services that we connect to when we play Star Citizen, could be anywhere. It's really just a computer on the internet. So we could host that here on our own servers. This is the way we used to do it in the old days. The problem with that model is that first you have to acquire a lot of servers, and that's a pretty big expense, whereas with the cloud or hosted rental market, we can only rent or buy what we need, and then we can turn it off and stop paying for it if we're not using it. With dedicated hardware, we have a massive overhead in maintaining that equipment, whereas if we're using someone else's, we don't have to worry so much about that. If a fan goes out or a CPU or a power supply goes out in a virtual environment, these systems are designed to automatically roll over to the next available machine. So this gives us a tremendous amount of flexibility at a much lower price point than if we had to acquire everything ourselves. One of the things that I think is really important to point out, and I hope that Ahmed can explain to you, is the additional flexibility we get in the network. If we just host it here, let's say in Austin or at any of our studios, the players would be connecting to that one place. What we can do now by utilizing servers located throughout the world is that we could put servers anywhere we need them, wherever the players are, if that makes sense to do.
Ahmed, do you want to tell us a little bit more about the services that actually comprise Star Citizen today?
Absolutely. So the game itself needs, any client that any player has needs another component, the DGS, the dedicated game server. We always call it DGS. However, you cannot have this connection between the player and the dedicated game server that he wants to play with unless you have a lot of back-end services taking care of a lot of business logic that the player needs. For example, the player needs to be able to declare his request, what game he wants to play. He wants to say that he wants to play with his friends, communicate with them, chat with them. And these are the services that are being developed here in Austin by our back-end services team, Jason Ely and Tom Sawyer. Currently what we have our layout or our VM mainly fall in three main types. We have a hub server or a hub VM, and a core VM, and a game VM. The game VM is just a virtual machine that we acquire from our public cloud provider. In our current case, it's EC2. And you would load it with DGS instances according to that amount of load that we decided on, how many instances would run on how many CPU, how much memory, how much network. And they all get connected to the core services. The core box would have several services. Most importantly, we have GEM, the General Instance Manager. A lot of backers already are familiar with the name and know what it does. And we have the Pcache, persistence cache. Persistence cache sits before the persistence database service that writes directly to the database, taking all the traffic from all the dedicated game servers and pushing it down to the database in more of a queued, organized manner rather than having all the game servers hammering one single service. The current model that we have, we can have as many hubs as we need. We can have as many game servers as we need, but we have only one single singleton of every one of these services, but that's the current model. Because usually, during my experience in startups, you go out with proofing your concept, then having your MVP, minimum viable product, make sure that's what you need, and then you start moving from there. So currently, the backend service team are working on revamping and redesigning all these singletons into so many stateless, easy to scale services that we can have whatever we want and cope with whatever load we get. And that's the main point that we are in the cloud. One of the main great things about being in the cloud is being able to scale whenever we want. Back in the days when you were trying to market the clouds, you always used to bring up the examples from the Black Friday. You have a shop that sells like flour or sells toys. Year round, you can be fine by running one single VM. On Black Friday, you need 200. That's when you go to the cloud. And we have the same concept because we need to be always able to provide resources and game servers for the players to play, no matter how many of them decided to play, no matter where they are.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about how we've added functionality or added features over time and sort of where that gets us today? And I'm particularly interested in understanding from your experience, like the level of complexity that we have in Star Citizen today already compared to a lot of other games.
Well, one way I like to describe that is in a physical way that you can kind of visualize. When we were developing the hangar module, of course we had fewer people, and everything that we did as a company came together in one computer, a tall one, but it was not a very big computer, and it sat under one guy's desk, and we got one build a day. The needs of the publishing increased so rapidly that this one computer wasn't going to be enough. And when we took a look at this, we realized we would need a room full of computers to do this. So this is what Ahmed talks about when we developed our own internal cloud. So we've built a virtualization infrastructure where we can actually expand, much in the same way the game servers run. We expand a internal build system that increases dynamically based on the needs.
Tell me about what you've been working on lately. This is a major new feature that all of this infrastructure and architecture that we've talked about has gone through multiple generations and iterations and really set us up for something that you've been working on now with other engineers. Tell us about it.
So since December, we started looking at, we released Star Marine. And now we have a lot of players who want to play FPS. And a lot of players have been asking us, where is the multi-region work? Where can we be able to play in servers closer to us? So we all agree that this is the right moment. Mm-hmm. We have an FPS right now, so let's have multi-regions. Mm-hmm. So since December, and including January, and maybe a little bit of February, we have been working in the multi-region servers to be able to have servers in as many regions as we want without the player having the disconnect that he has to move from a region to another, because you all share the single database. So the same player can play in EU and then a few minutes later can switch and go back and play in the US, and he'll find the same information that he needs. As any new feature we come out with, as I was just explaining, we try to come out with a certain delivery between a POC, a proof concept, and an MVP, a minimum viable product, and that's what we have right now. And I believe we have selection for the regions that we will start with, and we have been building or editing our automation tools, Salt Stack, to be able to cope with different regions, different naming, different availability zones, which is a concept that happened inside AWS, and how we can add resilience while we are adding availability at the same time. So we always know if something went down over here, we'll have a replacement for it over there, but also we are trying to get as closer as we can to our player base. Currently, I believe we will start rolling out, we have our current region in Virginia, North Virginia, US East one, and we will be adding Frankfurt, and we will be adding Sydney. And it's been a lot of fun. Just every single minute that was spent in this project, connecting these regions together, making sure that everything worked correctly, it was kind of different than any other changes that we did, because we know that this will really enhance the player experience. We know that players will feel that. There's a lot of work that we get to do, but you're like, we just did something really cool, but players won't really get to notice it. But this one, we really hope that they notice it, they like it, and we can embrace it and expand on it too.
One thing I know about the multi-region work is that there's really two levels to this experience. from the player's perspective of playing in a different region or being able to choose a region. One piece of it is where the game server is located, and this is the DGS that you talked about. And the other piece, which is invisible to the player, is where the hub server is located.
Yes.
And so my understanding is that as we roll out to these different regions, that players will always connect to the hub server that's closest to them.
Absolutely.
Which gets them into our network at that point, instead of just going over the open internet. And then from there, they can play on a dedicated game server that's either located in that same region, or the DGS may be located in another region.
Correct. So the way the feature is going to roll out, utilizing the technology of using a new extension in DNS that would allow the DNS server to know a little bit more about the location of the requester, we would be able, using a service like Route 53, to send players to the closest load balancer to them, and from the load balancer it would take it to the most suitable hub server that you have. The moment you get in this hub, you will get marked with a region ID. That's the region ID you walked in with, and the matchmaker will respect that choice. You came from region ID, that means Europe, then you're going to get sent to a game server in Europe. You want to go play with your friends, then make your selection and go play in the US. So hopefully this will be rolled out real soon, and players will enjoy it, and we will expand on it and listen to all their feedback and try to make it much better.
Yeah.
Ahmed makes it sound so simple.
I know, right? It makes perfect sense, right?
We've been working on this for some time, and
Yeah.
it has been a fun project, but there is a tremendous amount of network engineering and network security that goes into this, and also performance tuning that has to be considered for this to work.
I mean, you said a minute ago, well, we worked on this in December and January, but it's also the case that if it wasn't for, the 18 months of work that came before that, that you couldn't do this in 2 months, right?
Absolutely. And that's when experience kicks in, and that's how you learn the hard lessons from before. You have to plan everything ahead. You have to make sure that you have areas where you can expand, and don't get surprised that you're going to leave the current region that you work in. And if you want to talk a little bit technical, AWS, the largest organizational body they have, is called VPC, Virtual Private Cloud. And a virtual private cloud cannot go across regions. So you cannot have one single VPC, which is a cloud, and by the cloud meaning it follows one single network CIDR, like it's a single internal network that you can divide in between, but you cannot really make a VPC have the same existence, the same IP address, subnet, or the same networking between two different regions. So you have to make sure that you make your own tunnels, and you have to make sure that your VPCs were aligned correctly. They're not going to collide. You will get to know who's coming from what, who needs to talk to what. Any other traffic will get in the way, and also be able to recover. Because definitely, while you're being in the cloud, such a great thing, it's an amazing thing, but always designed for failure. Everything will fail. You have neighbors, you have a lot of very complicated stack beneath you to know what's going on. As Mike was explaining, the disks might go bad or anything could happen. So we have been working in that to make sure that even if we lost our tunnels, we can recover in a few minutes from alert on it, and make sure that we are delivering the traffic needed from the distant game servers to the core service that runs the matchmaking or database and all of that, with the best achieved latency and the most attainable bandwidth that we can attain between these different regions. And I think we started kind of like with a big stretch. We're going to Sydney, we're going from Virginia to Sydney, and we're going to Frankfurt. Frankfurt is actually central in Europe. When you look at it, we could have went Ireland. That makes it a little bit easier for us. But we said, okay, let's do it. So we're going to Sydney with Frankfurt and Virginia for the first rollout. And all the networks are laid out. We are ready to expand. I believe there are 14 or 15. We are ready to expand in every single region in AWS whenever we feel we need to.
Well, that's perfect for my last question, which is to say, where are you going from here? Like, what do you see on the roadmap after this? And what does this set you up for? And what could we expect to see in the future?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to multi-region, I'm not sure if I can state them all. I think I can. They have Ohio, Oregon, California, Ireland, London, Sydney, Mumbai, Sao Paulo, Brazil, I believe Tokyo, Japan, Seoul, Korea, So yeah, sky's the limit, and they keep adding more regions. I believe they're gonna have a new region in France and one more in China soon. So as you mentioned, the way it works, because we are here to build this project, we always try to lay our foundation. And with the support that we get from you and we get from Mike, that we can take our time to build our own foundations and tech so we can capitalize on it in the future and be able to roll quick features. That's what we have been doing. Right now, going to any region is not going to be any limit to us. And once we are done with Ultima region, this year is going to be a little bit busy for us because we have a lot of, as much as we were talking about how the back-end services started with having a proof of concept and then moved to an MVP, and these are going to get revamped. We have a lot of infrastructure elements that we need to look at. We have a lot of areas where we monitor certain aspects. We need to group some of them. We need to diverse some of them. We need to be able to look more at log aggregation solutions, how we can scale it out. Because the way we look at it, we need to be ready to have 10,000 VMs reporting at the same time without crippling us. And that's the price that's the reward that we get from having a DevOps department early on. I hope this answers the question.
Yeah.
Every year we say the same thing, but this one really feels like we're making some big headway. The automation systems are done now. We feel like we can scale with a very high reliability. We have far fewer panic nights where we're staying up all night trying to solve problems. So definitely the work that we've put in has paid great dividends. And so now with this expansion into multi-regions, that just gives us more that we can do.
Cool. Well, I'm really proud of the work that you and your teams have accomplished, and I'm really happy that we have a chance to share this in more detail with our fans, and I look forward to all the great things that are yet to come.
Yep.
Thank you,
Cool.
John.
Thanks,
for the
guys.
time.